Hi, and welcome to the N400 or Naturalization Training or the Forum Station at Seattle Citizenship Workshops by the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs for the City of Seattle. First, we'll start with going over a little bit about what to expect in the training today. We'll discuss why citizenship matters, talk about citizenship workshops and how they basically function, go over volunteer roles and expectations, review the legal requirements for citizenship, and then go through the N400 form in detail. First, why citizenship matters. There are many reasons to become a citizen, and each person decides to pursue citizenship for their own reasons. However, some of the key benefits of citizenship that I want to highlight today include voting, becoming a permanent part of our country, and therefore having a sense of belonging and ownership that comes with that permanence, the ability to help your family come to the United States and become citizens, either for legal permanent residents who have children who are under the age of 18 and live with them. This may be automatic, or also for family members who are outside the United States. U.S. citizens have a faster and more straightforward process to bring those family members to the United States. Becoming a citizen also improves access to government jobs, public benefits, and scholarships. Citizens do not need to fear deportation, whereas even a relatively minor crime, like a DUI, a bar fight, or a possession charge could result in deportation for a non-citizen, even a legal permanent resident. And finally, citizens can travel on a U.S. passport. Citizens can travel for any length of time and don't face some of the restrictions that legal permanent residents face. There are 23,000 green card holders in Seattle, 70,000 in King County, and 180,000 in Washington State who have been here for a requisite 5 years to apply for citizenship. However, less than 10% have actually applied. Why is that? There are a number of barriers to become a citizen. However, some of the most common barriers we see include the cost. It's currently $680 to apply for citizenship, and thousands of dollars, generally $3,000 to $5,000, in legal fees if you need the assistance of an attorney. Also, many people have difficulties with the English or civics tests. You must speak and read English to be able to apply, and you also must pass a civics and history exam. Many clients have difficulty learning sufficient English, and many more believe that they may have difficulty and therefore delay becoming a citizen for fear that they'll have difficulty passing this test. Fear and confusion is another key barrier. There is a significant amount of fear of the process, especially for refugees and others who've had negative interactions with governments. In addition, this fear is based in reality. For some people, applying for citizenship can be a significant risk. Also, the paperwork is quite long and complicated, and the process can be confusing. So many people feel that they need help to begin to navigate the process. And finally, there's a lack of help. There's a lack of free legal assistance. There are many wonderful agencies who offer some form of assistance in applying for citizenship, but there is more demand than there are agencies to meet the need. Similarly, there are many agencies that offer ESL or citizenship classes. However, there are more people who need these classes than there are classes available. I want to go over a little bit about the citizenship process overall. The first and most difficult step is to become a legal permanent resident, or LPR. This is also known as a green card holder. People become LPRs in a variety of different ways with a variety of different paths that we're not going to go over today. However, once you have reached this point and become a legal permanent resident, you must wait 5 years or 3 years if married to a U.S. citizen before you can apply for naturalization. Once you've reached that waiting period and you are eligible to apply for citizenship, you need to apply using an N400 application. This is the step that we do at Citizenship Workshop. After you have completed your application and mailed it to USCIS, you will receive an appointment to get fingerprinted and photographed. Several weeks after that appointment, you will get another appointment for your naturalization interview. This is where you will also be given the English and civics exam. Assuming you pass, the next step is to take the oath of allegiance at a citizenship ceremony, which often takes place the very same day. Once you've taken the oath of allegiance, you are a citizen. As I mentioned, the process can be long, complicated, expensive, and sometimes frightening. Generally speaking, the citizenship process, from the point that someone mails their application to the point that they become a citizen, takes about 3 to 6 months. Now we're going to go over a little bit about citizenship workshops and how they function. First of all, what is a citizenship workshop? A citizenship workshop is a day-long free legal clinic to help eligible legal permanent residents, or LPRs, become citizens. Workshops are staffed by volunteers, like you. Clients move through stations, fill out their paperwork, get resources, and prepare their entire application, often to the point where it's ready to mail at the end of the day. Who can we help at a citizenship workshop? There are many people who are eligible to become citizens who are not going to be served at a citizenship workshop. Citizenship workshops are best designed for eligible legal permanent residents with uncomplicated applications who are capable of going through the rest of the process without any help. Many people, such as elderly and disabled legal permanent residents, or those with complicated cases, may need more hand-holding throughout the process itself. These people with complicated cases or who need one-on-one support, will be referred to a partner to receive that support. So who should be referred to a partner for one-on-one help? We have wonderful partners who offer free one-on-one help applying for citizenship in their offices. Anyone who might need more support will be referred to one of these partners. This includes anyone we think may need more help with their application or with navigating the rest of the application process. For example, people who need a medical or disability waiver will need to be referred out. This includes people who suffer from dementia, stroke, or Alzheimer's. People who need to learn more English before passing the interview will also need to be referred out for ESL resources. And people who have complicated cases because of past arrests, convictions, extended travel, or other serious red flags. This is just for your information. Our volunteer attorneys will make the final decision about who should be referred out to one-on-one help, but it's helpful to know the kinds of cases that can and cannot be served at a citizenship workshop. Now we're going to talk about volunteer roles and expectations. Now we're going to talk about volunteer roles and responsibilities. First of all, it's important that you come prepared. This means reviewing your role before you come to the citizenship workshop. Also, it's important to be patient. Clinics can be hectic, full of long lines, and lots of excited people. The more patient you can be, the more smoothly the day will run. It's also important to be on time and prepare to stay the full time of the workshop. We begin in the morning with training that's critical for your role. So it's important that you're on time. And it's important that you prepare to stay the full day. We serve clients right up until the point we close the workshop. If you have any questions, ask your station lead and they can help clear them up. And finally, be kind, courteous, and flexible with all clients. Here's a little bit about what to expect. As I mentioned, it's important to arrive on time. We have a lot to go over in the morning, and you'll need your coffee and breakfast. While we officially open the doors at 10 a.m., there is almost always a line much earlier, often before anyone, even the volunteers, arrive. We try to get people settled and started early, if at all possible, especially in the registration and intake stations. Doors will close at 1 p.m. or until we've reached capacity for the day, whichever happens first. Anyone who arrives after this time will get information about the next clinic and about our one-on-one partners. Wait times are long. The process usually takes about 3 hours for each person, so clients can get hungry, frustrated, and bored. If you are patient and calm, this will go much more smoothly. It's also important to maintain a sense of flexibility. As I said, clients often arrive early, and we often have to switch roles around the day of because someone did not show up or other stations are being inundated with a particular kind of client and we need you to switch roles. There are big rushes and then long waits. So please maintain flexibility. I'm going to go a little bit over the flow of the workshop. As I said before, there are 6 basic stations and clients move between these stations throughout the workshop to complete their citizenship application. The first station is intake and greeting, where clients are checked to see if they have their paperwork, they receive their tracking form, and they wait for their first step in the process. The next station is screening. This is staffed by volunteer attorneys. This is where we screen clients for red flags and English language skills. If there are any questions, experienced attorneys review the case and decide if the person should be referred out or can go forward. The form station is where paralegals, law students, non-immigration attorneys, and other trained volunteers help clients fill out their N400 or citizenship application, and if they qualify, an I-912 or fee waiver. After clients go to the form station, they'll go to the attorney review station. This is where an experienced immigration attorney will review all of their paperwork and case and make sure that it's ready to go. Attorneys either clear the client to apply on their own, refer them to a partner for one-on-one help, or recommend that they don't apply at all. If the attorneys clear the client to go forward, they will go to the copying and packaging station to have their application prepared for mailing. This includes packing the application in a certified mail envelope that's already self-addressed and scanning it into our system. Clients who don't qualify for a fee waiver but do need help paying the citizenship application fee will have the option to go to an additional station to find out about small citizenship loans to help them pay the $680 fee. The exit station is one of the most important stations. It's where we collect the tracking form so that we know what happened to the client, give them referrals for one-on-one help, citizenship classes, ESL classes, and other resources, and make sure they understand their next steps and say goodbye. Station leads. Station leads are the head of their station. If you have any questions about what to do, where to go, or what you should or should not fill out, they are your first line of defense. The station leads will lead a training for volunteers at their station in the morning. They are here to answer your questions and make sure that their station is moving smoothly. They're responsible for directing the flow at their station, keeping track of who's waiting and who's next, answering questions, and checking the forms, especially the tracking form, before the client leaves the station. The tracking form is the only record we have of what happened to each client. It must be filled out at every station so we can follow what happened to each client, and so the next station knows what they must do next. Now, we're going to talk about the forms volunteer's role. First, you should introduce yourself, review the notes from the screening station to see if there are any red flags and what the attorney decision was regarding those red flags, and then you'll fill out the N400. You'll go through each question and fill out the form. Even some questions which may seem irrelevant or awkward to ask, it's important to go through each single question. If you're unsure at any point, raise your sign and the station lead will come and help you. We have floating experts on N400s who can assist you in any question you may have. If you want to note information for the attorney and you're not quite sure how to fill out that section, please leave the question blank and make the note on a Post-it on that question. The attorney can fill it out properly when they do the review. Then you'll fill out the I-912 if the client is qualified. If the client does not have their benefits letter or proof of income, fill out the form and give them clear instructions about what they must include for their application to be accepted. If the client is not eligible for a fee waiver but still would like help paying for their citizenship fee, let them know there are citizenship loans available and give them a loan referral slip for the loan station if they are interested. Again, it's very important that you do not forget to fill out the tracking sheet. We'll go over both Form N400 and Form I-912 in greater detail at a later point. Now let's talk about the tracking form in a little bit more depth. The tracking form is not a USCIS issued form. It's a form created by the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. It is our only record of what each client experiences as they move through the workshop, and it's very important that we collect this form at the end of the day and that it's filled out consistently throughout the day. You must fill out the tracking form for your station for each client that you see. Fill it out completely, checking all the appropriate boxes, and leave notes that are helpful for the next station. It's also very important that you put your name so that we can find you if we have a question. Be sure that no one leaves with the tracking form. We must collect it at the end of each day. Station leads will check the tracking form as each client leaves their station to ensure it was filled out there. We want all of our volunteers to help us in making sure that no one leaves the building with their tracking form. Please don't hesitate if you have any questions, but make sure that you fill out the tracking form with each client. I'm going to talk a little bit about best practices for forms volunteers. These are real people with complicated stories. Please be careful and kind and recognize that as a forms volunteer, you will be asking them some very sensitive questions. You are often the first person who spends an extended period of time with them, other than the screening attorney, and you're the first person who fills out the form. It's important to establish trust with the client. You must go through every question, asking multiple ways, don't assume, and don't skip any sections. Whenever possible, try to work with the client alone rather than with family or friends alongside. This can be awkward, but there are many questions on the form people may not be comfortable sharing with family and friends. We want to make sure that they feel comfortable telling us the truth and not hold back because of embarrassment, because their child is next to them or a family friend. Trust your instincts. If you have any doubts or if you feel like your client is holding back, flag it for the attorney. And again, please fill out the tracking form. Now we're going to go over the legal requirements for citizenship. Again, before anyone comes to a form station volunteer, they will already be screened for eligibility and red flags. So this is more for your information. The basic naturalization eligibility requirements are that the person is at least 18 years old, that they've been a legal permanent resident for 5 years or 3 years if married to a U.S. citizen, that they have been inside the United States for at least half of the last 5 years or 3 years if married to a U.S. citizen, and that their residence has been continuous. They must have good moral character, must read, write, and speak some English. They must be able to pass a U.S. history and civics exam, and they must be willing to take the oath of allegiance. These are the basic requirements. We'll go into each of them in a little bit more detail. First, I want to point out that there are multiple versions of the green card, and most of them are not in any way green. The most basic requirement for citizenship is that the client is 18 and over, and that they are a legal permanent resident, otherwise known as a green card holder, and have been for at least 5 years or 3 years if married to a U.S. citizen. You don't need to know what every variation on a green card looks like, but you will be looking at your client's green cards as you're writing down their A numbers and ensuring that the name you're putting on the form is exactly as it appears on their green card. So we wanted to give you some examples of what a green card can look like and where some of the key information is. If you're having trouble finding what you need on the card, again, you can always flag your station lead. Now let's talk about the continuous residence and physical presence requirements. Physically present means that the person must have been physically within the borders of the United States for at least half of the previous 5 years or 3 years if married to a U.S. citizen. Again, we'll go into this in more detail later, but essentially it means that the cumulative trips that they've taken outside of the country must not add up to more than half of the last 5 years or 3 years. They must also have maintained continuous residence. That means that trips outside the United States are fine, but not for extended periods. They couldn't have moved away from the country and then come back. Anything over 6 months is a concern, and you should flag it for the attorney. They must also have been a resident of Washington State for 3 months prior to filing. They must reside in the United States between filing and taking their oath. And they can apply up to 90 days before they complete their 5-year residence period, or 3 years if married to a U.S. citizen. But they cannot apply before that. If they're filing based on marriage to a U.S. citizen, they must not only have been a legal permanent resident for 3 years, they must also have completed 3 years of marriage. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the good moral character requirement. This is the most complex requirement, and it's also one of the most serious. If someone has a problem proving good moral character, you look both to make sure that they're still eligible to become a citizen and that they're not in danger of ending up in deportation proceedings. As I mentioned before, citizenship is a serious business, and some past actions can result in a legal permanent resident ending up in deportation proceedings, so we're very careful about the good moral character requirement. Clients should be screened for these issues before they get to you and cleared to go forward, but if you uncover any new questions, please ask. We always want to err on the side of caution. Again, you don't need to memorize everything I'm about to say, or understand the good moral character requirement fully, but it's good to have a sense of what it involves so that you can help flag potential problems. The government defines 2 ways that applicants can fail to meet the good moral character requirement. One are mandatory bars. These automatically stop someone from becoming a citizen and can often also lead to deportation. Discretionary bars don't automatically stop someone, but they can also lead to deportation, and the USCIS officer can choose whether or not to allow that person to go forward. Mandatory bars, as you can see on your screen, are divided into 2 categories. Mandatory bars that are permanent, an aggravated felony conviction after 11/29/1990, or a murder conviction. And then there are mandatory bars that are only mandatory within the statutory period, that 3 or 5 year period. These include conviction or admission of a crime involving moral turpitude in the last 5 years, 2 or more sentences with a total sentence of 5 or more years, any controlled substance violation, any conviction or convictions with more than 180 days in jail, false testimony to gain immigration benefit, alien smuggling, or bringing someone into the United States or assisting them in entering the United States illegally, polygamy, prostitution, gambling, and habitual drunkenness. The discretionary bars, in other words, the bars that do not automatically disqualify for someone, but which the immigration officer can decide to consider, include incorrect or false information given to an immigration official, failure to pay child support, registering to vote or claiming to be a U.S. citizen, tax violations, failure to register for the Selective Service, and a long list of other criminal violations or unlawful acts. Again, These are discretionary bars, meaning that the USCIS officer can decide whether or not they are something that should stop someone from moving forward with their citizenship application. However, a number of the discretionary bars can also result in deportation or removal proceedings, so we need to proceed with caution. If you have a client who has had anything to do with a police officer, a judge, a jail, or an immigration official, please flag it. We always want to err on the side of caution. Now let's talk about the English requirement. Citizenship requires basic English skills, not perfect English. You must be able to hold a conversation in English at what USCIS calls about a fourth grade level. This is difficult to determine, and sometimes we think that it really goes a little bit beyond a fourth grade level, because you must be able to talk about the application that your client has filed, the citizenship application, which includes many concepts and vocabulary that would be beyond your average fourth grader. You must be able to read and write 1 to 2 basic sentences in English, and your English ability is determined at the interview by the USCIS officer. If someone can hold a basic conversation about their application with you in English, they probably are ready to pass the English requirement. There are a number of English exceptions that we'll talk about in a moment, but if they don't qualify and they can't talk to you in basic English, they're probably not ready. We encourage everyone who's not ready to take ESL classes and study more before applying, but we leave the decision up to each person if they want to go forward. They will have about 3 to 6 months to improve their English level. Some people want to risk it and give it a shot, other people don't. The one exception is if someone is completely illiterate in English and doesn't qualify for an English exemption, we generally strongly advise them to wait, since learning to read and write in English from scratch in 3 to 6 months is generally not feasible. Now let's talk about exceptions to the English requirement. Certain legal permanent residents who have been legal permanent residents for a long period of time and are older individuals will qualify for an English exemption. If your client is over 50 and has been a legal permanent resident for at least 20 years, or over 55 and has been a legal permanent resident for over 15 years, they don't have to pass the English requirement. They must still pass the history and civics test, but they can do so in their own language. Note, unfortunately, there are no exceptions for age alone. Even if someone is 120 years old, but they've only been a legal permanent resident for 5 years, they must pass in English. There's another exemption based on a medical condition, which we'll talk about in a moment. Now we're going to talk about the U.S. History and Civics exam. The History and Civics exam questions cover U.S. history, geography, government, and culture. These exam questions are all pre-published to study. There are 100 possible questions. During the applicant's interview, a computer selects 10, and they must answer at least 6 right. If they get the first 6 right, they'll stop there and not need to answer any additional questions. Applicants who are over 65 and have been a legal permanent resident for 20 years or longer can take a shorter version with only 20 possible questions to study from. Now we're going to talk about the medical and disability waiver, otherwise known as an N400. If someone has a permanent or long-lasting diagnosable medical reason that prevents them from learning English or civics information, they can get a waiver and skip both the English and civics requirement. Examples include stroke, dementia, or Alzheimer's. However, these are very hard to obtain and require a doctor to complete the form because it is a medical and not legal determination. We cannot complete N648s at workshops, not only because they require a doctor to fill out the form, but also because these clients are often vulnerable applicants who need to go through the rest of the process with help and one-on-one assistance. Therefore, we we refer out anyone who might qualify for an N648 application or a medical and disability waiver. If you think your client might qualify, please flag it and ask your station lead. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about children and citizenship. You must be an adult in order to apply for citizenship. In other words, you must be over 18 years of age. However, certain children are able to automatically become citizens when their parent naturalizes. Children who are legal permanent residents and under the age of 18, when at least one parent naturalizes, if that parent is also their physical and legal custodian, the child will automatically become a U.S. citizen. Now we'll be talking about the N400 form, or the naturalization application. We're going to go through this form step by step and note any places where you might need to note a red flag or other information. First, I want to stress again that citizenship is serious business. Citizenship workshops are designed for eligible legal permanent residents with uncomplicated cases who can go through the rest of the process without any help or representation. Sometimes the greatest thing you can do is making sure someone does not apply in this way if their case is complicated. Serious problems on an application do not just mean disappointment and the loss of $680. In some cases, it can result in a person losing their legal permanent residency or even being deported. We offer legal help with serious problems, but we can't offer the level of help that many people need. So it's important that we screen for any problems and determine if someone can go forward on their own or if they need more robust support. We need all of our volunteers to be careful, meticulous, and committed. This is a serious process with serious complications and serious impact. It's also very important to be empathetic. This process can be scary for clients, and it involves asking some very sensitive questions. We must ask about criminal history, children, divorces, and the state of their finances. Understandably, many people have problems talking about this with a relative stranger. Try to understand the nerves and shame your client may be feeling. Be patient, kind, and empathetic. Here are some quick guidelines for working with clients. You want to introduce yourself and try to establish trust as early as possible. These are real people with complicated stories, and the consequences of a lie or a mistake are very serious. It's important to go through every question, even the ones that seem silly or like they might not apply. Don't skip a question, don't assume, and make sure to ask key questions in multiple ways. If a client seems confused or hesitate, keep asking. The questions cover sensitive areas like past crimes, past marriages, and children. There may be information that the client doesn't want to share with a spouse, child, family member, or friend. Wherever possible, we will try to work with clients alone or with an interpreter who isn't part of their immediate family. If you can't, or if the client seems to be hesitating, make a note of the question for the attorney so they can probe more. It's important to trust your instincts. When in doubt, flag it. We'd much rather flag something that turns out not to be a problem than overlook something that turns out to be a problem. Now, there are 4 key forms that you'll be dealing with. One is, of course, the tracking form, which is our record of what happened to the person and what advice was given. The N400, the citizenship application, the I-912, the fee waiver application, which we'll go over in a separate training module, and the N648. This is the disability or medical waiver. You cannot complete these at a workshop, but it's good for you to know that they exist. Let's start with the basics. You'll need to write the A number, their alien identification number, which is on their green card, on every page. This is a little time consuming and a little bit repetitive. It's important to do it, because if a page gets separated, we want them to be able to reunite all of the pages of the application. It's important to use black ink only. No blue ink is accepted, or any other color. If the application is handwritten, which at most of our workshops we do complete our applications in handwriting as opposed to by computer, it's important to use all caps, as this is easier to read and to write clearly and legibly. If you make a mistake, that's fine. We'll have whiteout available for you to correct any mistakes. There'll be correction tape or liquid whiteout. Make sure that it's dry and then write right over it. If you have to start a whole new page, that's totally fine as well. We have extra copies of the N400. You can swap out a page. Now we'll talk about a few common trouble spots. As I've mentioned before, we do screen clients for red flags or potential problems prior to arriving at the form station. So most of these should have already been caught, and there should be a note in the screening section from the screening attorney. However, it's possible to miss things, especially since clients have just begun the process and may open up a little bit later on. Sometimes they tell us things at the form station they didn't mention at the screening station. Some are minor, some are major. It's important to flag any question, anything that you have a doubt about, and so the attorneys can take a look. Common trouble spots that are often a challenge include travel, especially taking a trip that's too long, 6 or more months, or also there's just difficulty in remembering all of the travel that someone has taken in the last 5 years. This is often a challenging section. Criminal history is a big red flag. Any arrest or conviction can potentially be a problem, especially anything involving more than 180 days in jail or a felony. But any contact with a police officer, judge, or jail system should be flagged for the attorney. Alien smuggling is another challenge. Now, this sounds very strange, but alien smuggling just refers to helping someone cross the border illegally. And this gives a very broad definition. It includes physically smuggling someone across the border, but it also includes sending money to help a relative cross, or walking across a relatively open border with someone you know shouldn't be entering the United States. It's important to ask some probing questions around alien smuggling because we don't want something to come up in the interview that someone hasn't disclosed to us that could be a serious problem. This is a deportation issue. Other common problems we see are accidentally registering to vote or claiming to be a U.S. citizen. For example, when filling out W-2 paperwork, just checking the wrong box. And other good moral character problems, such as any problem with alcohol or multiple marriages or overlapping marriages. Now, we're going to start with the tracking form. Again, it's super important that you fill out a tracking form for every client, fill it out completely. You'll start by checking that you have completed the N400 once you've done so, and noted any red flags or missing information for quality review. You'll also put those notes in that box just below it. Make sure you write your name and you sign so that we can keep track of which client went with which volunteer in case there are any questions. And then once you've completed the N400, you'll move on to the fee waiver screening and potentially the fee waiver if they're qualified. This will be covered in a later module, so we won't be talking much about the fee waiver today. If possible, you should follow along with a real N400 for the next section of slides. You should have received one in your training materials. You can also download an N400 at the website you'll see on your screen, or simply by Googling N400 application. Following along with a real N400 will make this training much easier to understand. First, we'll talk about Part 1 and 2. Part 1 is how they establish their eligibility. The preference is for the 5-year window. Unless there's something within that 5 years that could be a problem, then we'll choose the 3-year window. The reason that we like to choose the 5-year window is because the 3-year window is based on marriage to a U.S. citizen. And USCIS will look more closely at the client's case if it's based on a marriage. Also, it means that that client's marriage must be intact 6 months down the road when they actually have their interview and go through the citizenship process. Now, one never knows, but it's best not to risk and add extra complication to the application if that's not necessary. Part 2 is basic information, including their current legal name, their name exactly as it appears on the green card, even if it's misspelled, and then other names they may have used, including a maiden name or other variations in their name. Now, continue talking about part 2. In part 2, question 12, this is a medical and disability waiver question. Anyone who wants to answer yes here and thinks they may qualify should be referred out. Examples include strokes, developmental disability, dementia, Alzheimer's, or other barriers that would keep them from permanently or in a very long-lasting way learning English or civics information. If you come across anyone who may qualify, please stop immediately and flag down your station lead. Question 13 is screening for English exemptions. If you have a client who does not qualify for an English exemption and does not appear to speak any English or speaks very limited English, they should probably wait to apply until they've taken some ESL classes and improved their English. No matter how old the client is, they only qualify for a waiver if they have both age and the length of residence, 20 or 15 years, which are necessary. If you feel like your client may need extra English assistance, again, please note this for the attorney. Part 3 deals with accommodations for individuals with disabilities or impairments. Generally speaking, this means a physical disability that might make it difficult for them to access the USCIS building, or a disability like blindness or deafness, where they may need an accommodation. You should also flag anybody who falls into these categories because they may need more assistance during the interview, and we may want to refer them out. Now, parts 4 and 5 deal with contact information. USCIS primarily contacts applicants through the mail, so having a stable, safe, and accurate mailing address is key. You will want to provide at least one phone number, and you should provide an email if they have one and they're comfortable providing it. That's optional. Part 5 deals with information about their addresses, current and for the last 5 years. USCIS not only uses this information to contact the client, they also use it to perform checks on their background. You're going to want to start with the most recent address and work backward. If the applicant does not know the full and exact dates, the computerized system will not accept incomplete dates. We default to the first of the month. If you're filling it in by hand, you can sometimes be a little bit more general, putting something like in the springtime, or spring, or fall may be acceptable if written in by hand. There is only space for 4 addresses. However, many of our clients will have many more than 4 addresses within a 5-year period. So if you need to list more addresses, just simply get an address addendum and list the additional addresses. Those addendums will be available at the resource table. Part 6 and 7 deal with parents and demographic information. Part 6 asks about parent citizenship. This is gathering information about possible acquired citizenship. This means USCIS is checking if this person may already be a citizen. If either parent became a citizen before the client turned 18, or either parent was already a U.S. citizen at birth, at the client's birth, please flag this for the attorney. It's possible that the client is already a citizen. This usually happens about once per clinic. Now, the rest of the information is for USCIS to be able to run a background check through the FBI system and other systems. It's okay to copy from the client's driver's license. Ask about height, weight, hair color, eye color, etc. It's important to note that Hispanic or Latino is not a race according to USCIS, it's an ethnicity. Clients can choose if they are Hispanic or Latino under ethnicity, and then they must choose a race option. Per USCIS guidelines, white is the suggested box for Hispanic or Latino, but many clients are not comfortable choosing white. Clients can choose something else, whatever they feel most closely represents them. Part 8 deals with work history. Work history includes both traditional employment, periods of unemployment, and schooling for the last 5 years. Again, you'll want to start with the most recent employer or school and work backward. And you must include periods of unemployment. Again, there's a limited number of slots in the form, and many of our clients will have had more jobs than fit in those slots. If needed, use the supplemental form to list the additional jobs or schooling for the last 5 years. Part 9 deals with travel. Now, there are 3 questions. We actually recommend you start with question 3 because it will make filling out questions 1 and 2 much easier. Question 3 asks that you list all trips over 24 hours outside the United States for the last 5 years, starting with the most recent. This can be a big challenge because many times people don't remember the exact dates or all the times they've been out of the United States. This is especially true for people who live close to the Canadian border or who've lived in California, close to the Mexican border, and made frequent trips across the border. It's important that you flag any single trip that is more than 6 months, or flag if they seem to be getting close to the halfway mark for days within the statutory period, that 5 or 3 year period. If they're getting anywhere close to 800 or 850 days for someone applying under the 5-year rule, that's what you want to flag for the attorney. The total number of days, if it's close to 912 for the 5-year period, or 547, those are the cutoff days. So please do flag that for the attorney if it's anywhere even remotely near that. It's very common for clients to not remember all of their trips. If they can't remember exact dates, have them try to do the best they can. We often encourage people to bring their passports and check for passport stamps. They can also call a relative or a friend who may be able to help them remember the exact dates. If they simply cannot remember the dates of the travel, there is an addendum available that says something along the lines of, I cannot remember the exact dates of all of my trip outside the United States in the last 5 years. However, I know I only visited X countries, and I was out of the country for no more than X days at a time. I know that I was only outside the country for about X days total in the last 5 years. This addendum is a last resort, but we can use it if someone is truly unsure about what their travel history is. Part 10 looks at marriages. It's very important to flag if any of their marriages overlap, or if they're unsure that they were legally ended before they entered into a new marriage. This includes marriages that took place outside of the United States or prior to them becoming a legal permanent resident. If the client doesn't know the exact date of the marriage, it's okay to note approximately, or approx, unless it looks like the date may overlap with another marriage. You'll need to fill in information about the applicant's spouse and former spouses. This section is of concern to USCIS because they're looking for issues of potential marriage fraud or potential bigamy or polygamy. If there are any concerns, such as multiple or serial marriages in a short time, please flag them for the attorney. A note on question 7, if their spouse is not a U.S. citizen and does not have legal status, or in other words, is undocumented, you can check other in that section. This is often concerning for clients. They're concerned that revealing that their spouse is undocumented may cause their spouse to get into some sort of problems. This is not our experience. Of course, there is always a risk, but USCIS has stated publicly that they are not in the habit of going after the undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens or potential U.S. citizens. It's also important to note here, if they do have an undocumented spouse, you should ask how that spouse came to be in the United States, because you want to make sure they won't accidentally reveal something that could be considered alien smuggling if the USCIS officer asks the same question. If you have any questions in this section, again, please flag it for the attorney, especially if it looks like there may be any overlap in marriages. Now, Part 11 deals with children. You should list all children, including children who are adopted, stepchildren, children born outside the United States, and even deceased children. There's only space for 4 children. However, many of our clients have more than 4. If you need more room, use a supplemental sheet. The child's date of birth can be unknown if there's no way to get that information, but obviously we want to get as much information as possible about each of the client's children. Now, it's very important that you have a complete list of children. This is less of a concern for your client and more of a concern for their children. If they're not listed on their parents' naturalization application, these children may have difficulty claiming some of the benefits, such as automatic U.S. citizenship or the ability to enter the United States at a later date. Part 12 deals with good moral character questions. The questions in this section may feel personal and awkward, but getting this information is incredibly important. Allowing someone who should not apply to go forward means they could end up in deportation proceedings. It's much better to have an awkward conversation and make sure all of our clients are safe. Don't assume. It's important to ask every person, every question, even if it seems like it wouldn't apply. Even that sweet little old lady in front of you may have a criminal conviction. I find it's helpful to often begin this section with a caveat and say something along the lines of, the U.S. government has decided that everyone who becomes a citizen has to answer all of these questions. Some of them might seem awkward or personal, or seem like they don't apply, but I can't assume an answer for you. We have to go through them all. Anything that you check yes on in this Part 12, these good moral character questions, should be flagged for the attorney. Again, these questions could lead not only to an application being denied, in some cases they can lead to deportation. So it's very important to ask multiple ways and really probe if you feel like the client may be holding something back or didn't understand the question. If you have any questions or doubts whatsoever, please flag it. Ask the question slowly and in multiple ways. Make sure the client understands what you're asking. Any yes answer in this section, questions 1 through 44, should be flagged. Questions 1 through 3 deal with a claim to U.S. citizenship or voting. This is a deportation issue, so it's very important to flag if there's any yeses or potential yeses in this section. Question 4 deals with hereditary titles, such as queen or duke. This is unlikely, but if they do have any hereditary title, they'll have to renounce it in order to become a U.S. citizen. Question 5 deals with any history of mental health issues that include confinement. If they've ever been confined to a mental institution, even for a short period of time, please flag this for the attorney. Questions 6 through 8 deal with taxes. Many clients who we see at citizenship workshops have such low incomes that they aren't legally required to file a tax return. If this is the case, they should check yes on question 7 and submit the supplement, I did not file in blank year because my income was below the legal threshold. This is not a problem. If they are not legally required to file taxes, they will not be held responsible for not filing those taxes. However, it is important that we make sure that they have paid all the taxes they are legally required to pay, and they don't owe any debt to the IRS. If they do, again, flag this for the attorney. Question 9 can help clients establish a good moral character case, actually bolstering their good moral character argument, or it can also hurt them depending on what kinds of organizations they need to list here. The question is very broad. They're asking for membership in any organization or group. This can include membership of a church, club, volunteer organization, etc. Red flags for this section would include anything related to terrorism, violence, gangs, or the Communist Party. Question 10, specifically about communism, totalitarian parties, or terrorist organizations. Any association, including membership, money donations, etc., with communist, totalitarian, or terrorist organizations should be flagged. If their membership in the Communist Party was mandatory, for example, as a citizen of China, they can submit a supplementary form to this effect. Just look for the Communist Party addendum in the extra materials. Questions 11 through 12 ask about human rights violations or violence. Again, if they have to answer yes to any of these questions, please flag it. Question 13 asks about association with the Nazis during World War II. Questions 14 through 21 deal with war crimes or human rights abuses. Again, anyone who answers yes to any of these questions should be flagged and will need an explanation. Any answer of yes will require further consultation with the attorney. Question 14 is worded very broadly. Current guidance for victims of genocide and torture so that they have to answer yes and then include an explanatory statement. If you have someone who is a victim of genocide or torture, they may need more special assistance to deal with the application process, partly just because of the trauma associated with having to explain this statement. If that's the case, flag down the station lead and we can refer them for one-on-one assistance. If for some of these questions, the if yes questions, they're okay to leave blank as long as the original answer was no. For questions 17 and 18, the original answer is no. As I said, you can leave the subparts blank. Questions 15 and 17 through 19 deal with foreign military service. This may not be a problem depending on the country of origin and the circumstances of their service, but it's important to flag. Questions 20 and 21 deal specifically with involvement with child soldiers. Again, if the person themselves was a child soldier, you'll probably need to answer yes, but want to flag this for the attorney. Questions 22 through 29 deal with arrests and crimes. This includes traffic tickets, anything but a parking ticket we want to list in the box on question 29. All of these questions go towards a good moral character requirement. Criminal issues can prevent someone from naturalizing and can possibly lead to removability. So ask this question in multiple ways. For example, have you ever gotten a ticket? Have you ever talked to the police for any reason? Even a speeding ticket needs to be marked yes, because the question includes, have you ever been cited? And tickets are a citation. It's also important to note that even if a record was expunged or closed in criminal court, it still counts for immigration purposes and should be listed. Your client may come to this section with notes from their screening attorney or the complex cases room about how to fill out this particular section. If you discover something that does not appear to have been screened through the complex cases room, please flag it where the station leads so that they can make sure this person is able to go forward. For question 23, again, this includes traffic tickets, and they'll need to list them in question 29 in that box. Questions 30 through 36 are some of the most awkward questions to ask, but many of these can also result in deportation, so you must ask them all. Questions 30 through 36 deal with previous interactions with the immigration system. Any of those can also result in problems, so please flag them for the attorney. Questions 37 through 43 involve military issues. Complete these questions as asked. However, it's rare that we see active duty military members at citizenship workshops. This is rare, but special rules do apply, so flag it if you do come across someone who is active duty military. Question 46 deals with the Selective Service. All males aged 18 to 26 are required to register for the Selective Service regardless of status, so even someone who's undocumented is technically supposed to be registered. To look up registration information, visit www.sss.gov. There you can fill out their information and look and see if there's a record of them registering. If they're between 18 and 26 now and have not registered, they'll need to do so. And you can do that immediately with them on the website, sss.gov. If they're 27 through 31 and have not registered, they'll need to submit a statement and also a request for status information letter. Flag this for the attorney and fill out the addendum saying that they did not willfully fail to register. If they're over 31 and did not register, they just need to submit a statement, again, saying that they did not willfully fail to register, they didn't know that they needed to. Questions 45 through 50 are the questions that are asked within the citizenship oath. They need to be answered, you need to be comfortable answering yes to each of these questions. Generally speaking, this is not a problem. Question 47 deals with bearing arms, and some people have a religious objection. They can request a modified version of the oath if their religion prohibits them from swearing oaths or bearing arms. Please note this for the attorney if this is the case with your client. If clients have any objections, again, flag this for the attorney. They will need to swear that they are comfortable with all of these questions during their interview. And then, of course, take the actual oath of citizenship. After this, you're done. Don't fill these sections out, sections 13 through 18. Section 14 is for interpreters only. They only need to be filled out if the person qualifies for an English waiver and has an interpreter with them the whole time. Part 15 includes the attorney will fill out this section after they review and approve the form. Parts 16 through 18 are filled out at the interview with USCIS. At this point, you've completed the N400 application. Please don't forget to also fill out the information on your tracking form. That means checking off that you've completed the N400, noting any red flags or questions, and noting what station the client should go to next. Usually this will be station 4, attorney review. If you've discovered a criminal issue that was not looked at before, it may need to go backward to the complex cases room. Now, I just want to go over a few last notes. Please take the time to read through the station instructions, which will be sent by email before Citizenship Day. You could be assigned to any of these stations. It's important that you're familiar with the way that the day works. Station instructions will be posted at each station, and extra copies of supplies, materials, and resources will be available in the room. But training is given in the morning before we start, so please be on time and don't miss out on your training. It's also important that you watch your email. We'll be sending important updates as the date approaches. Volunteer roles are pre-assigned based on the number that we expect to need at each station. It's imperative that you give us notice if you can't attend so we can shift volunteer numbers around. Finally, we just want to say thank you. Giving your time means that hundreds of people can take the next step to becoming citizens, being able to vote, reunite their families, and pursue their dreams. Without you, citizenship workshops would be truly impossible. So thank you so much for giving your time. It makes a huge difference. Please let us know if you have any questions. You can email us or call us at the information below. We're happy to answer questions from volunteers. Thank you, and thank you for completing this training. We'll see you at Citizenship Day.